My name is Smerglia, and I'll be presenting my coaching observation. So, looking at the background, I did my coaching observation on Tyler Drabick. He's a coach for 15U Match Factory. Match Factory is a club baseball team located in Ball River, Ohio. They're a travel baseball organization. They have ages from 9 all the way up to 18U. So, a little background about Tyler. He is 27. He's played baseball his life. He went to North Canton Hoover High School, which is part of the Federal League in Stark County, Ohio. He played baseball at Walsh, Kent State, Auburn, and Lipscomb. And then outside of coaching, he is one of the general managers of Match Factory in the organization. And he also has a regular day job as a museum director. All right, so taking a look at the reactive behaviors, there were about 68 total reactive behaviors. About 60% of those observations was just reactive. 60% of the observation was reactive behaviors. The top reactive behavior was reinforcement, and then a little background on the reinforcement. It's a rewarding reaction, so verbal or nonverbal, to a good play or high quality effort, such as saying maybe good job or way to go, and then nonverbal, clapping the hands, thumb up, or something like that. And then the reactive behavior that was used the least was punishment. The practice I observed was 15-year-old and 16-year-olds. It was a dual practice. There's probably about 10 of them there, and they split up into groups of 3 to 4. And they pretty much knew what they were doing. If there was something that they messed up or something they didn't do right, there wouldn't be a punishment. It would be more of him telling them what they did wrong and here's how to fix it. So taking a look at spontaneous behaviors, the spontaneous behavior was observed 46 total times through the practice, and it makes up about the other 40% of the observation. The most used was organization. So background on organization, it's administrative behavior that sets the stage by playing or assigning duties to each player. So like I said earlier, he would tell them, all right, guys, we're going to split up into groups of 3 to 4, and then half of them went to this side of the room, the other half went to that side of the room, and they were split. And then one part of the practice would be going on the other side of the field, and then batting cages, and then the other half would be going on the other side. And then taking a look, the behavior that was used the least was general encouragement. If there was general encouragement, I think he used it about 8 times, correctly, if I'm checking right. Yeah, 8 times. And there wasn't much because there was an assistant coach, and most of the time it was the assistant coach doing general encouragement, which is kind of weird because he did have a lot of the reinforcement for reactive behaviors. So when you look at spontaneous, he really didn't have much general encouragement. He really didn't notice it, I guess. He would notice when they were playing good, or doing the drill well. But if just like that would be after he would explain the drill, and then they do it right, and then he would be like, "Oh, great job," which isn't really general encouragement. General encouragement is when they don't need help and they do the drill well without any help, and he says, "Good job," which he only did about 8 times, which is pretty low, I think, for an hour practice. All right, so taking a look at the data sheet ratios, this is all pretty self-explanatory. So the total number of behaviors, which was 114, and then the total number of minutes, which I observed, was 60. So 114 divided by 60 comes out to about 2. There was a decimal, but I rounded up. The number of reinforcements divided by the total number of non-reinforcements, which is 20 divided by 5, that comes out to 4. And then taking a look at the number of reinforcements divided by the number of punishments, there were 20 reinforcements. There were only 2 punishments that were observed, which that comes out to 10. The number of reinforcements divided by the number of punitive technical instruction is 20 divided by 3. That comes out to 7. Also had to round up there. And then lastly, looking at the number of reactive behaviors divided by the number of spontaneous behaviors is 68 divided by 46, which ratios out to 2. Okay, taking a look at coaching behaviors, which is the Lacey and Darst model. So the coach gets the attention to the athletes by just using a normal tone. If the energy was high, it would be an excitement tone. I didn't really notice any type of angry tone like, here, you have to go here right now. It's more, hey guys, split up, go to this, and then the coach would explain the drill, which goes into the next point. He then instructs the drill on how to do the drill. The drills were pretty, they did a lot of drills in the 60 minutes I saw. They probably did about 10 to 12 drills, which is pretty good in my opinion. They start off practice by doing just like high knees, lunges, all that warm up type of stuff, and then they would throw a little bit after they did all their warm up stretches and stuff like that. Then they would split up right after that, and they would go into, half of the group would go to the weight room to do, I would say, pitching techniques with light weights. They did not do heavy weights, and then the other half would be doing med ball throws. So I think 2 of the drills with the med balls was they would have a partner, and then they would run backwards and chuck the med ball backwards. That was one of them. And then another one was them taking the med ball, and then they would basically toss it to the side of them, which proves the movement in the hips to the other player. So that was also a good drill. And then after that, they did velocity throwing to the net. So they would do like shuffle, shuffle, throw, and they would only throw to the top of the net. And then they would also do step and throw, step, throw, shuffle, shuffle. They really mixed it up. They also started backwards, and they would do 2 steps backwards, and they go shuffle, shuffle, and throw to the top of the net. One thing I did realize or notice during the practice is that he was pretty big on them not going 100%, which makes sense. It's the off season. You don't want to go full velocity. They went about 70% at most. I would say even some of them hit 60%. I mean, you really can't go 100% velocity in off-season training, just because you see so many players with arm problems nowadays, and you really don't want that when you're younger. So the drill, when the drill's happening, coach would tend to pay attention. I did notice some instances where he would get on his phone and kind of just let the assistant coach do his thing, which is all right. It probably would have been better if he wasn't on his phone and noticing what the assistant was showing in the drill, instead of just sitting on his phone to see if the assistant coach maybe messed up or explained the drill wrong. There was a practice plan in place. It was boom, boom, boom. He pretty much had it all memorized, and it was one thing after another. So what I found insightful, what I took in for when I get the duty of being a head coach, how organized the practice was. As I said, the practice plan was on point. It was boom, boom, boom. He knew what he was talking about. He didn't want to go 100%. He wanted to get the most out of the practice, and I think if you just go 70%, that really is going to build it when you get to your peak. Even going with how arm care was thought about. Arm care was totally thought about. I think it was like one of the biggest things mentioned, just because of how delicate arms are nowadays, especially for younger kids looking at 15 to 16. Like, these kids are freshmen, sophomores. They probably haven't played much varsity. Some of them, maybe 1 or 2 of them has played varsity, but they got to keep that arm nice and healthy. The focus of the players and how they enjoy practice. I think the practice plan was set up that the players were pretty focused, and when the coach was talking to them, they were focused. And then each kid I watched, when they were doing the drill and watching the coach was enjoying the practice, and the players were enjoying the practice. And I think at 15 and 16 years old, that is when it gets ramped up and it becomes serious. But they were definitely having fun. And then how each drill was well thought out of. So as I said earlier, the med ball stuff. Focusing on velocity, not going 100%. The drills were really thought out of, and it was basically all just on building velocity through the arm, but not building it quick to get them injured. So What the coach needs to improve on, I think limiting the general communication. There are times when the coach would get off track with the players, talk about something non-baseball related, like what are you gonna eat for dinner later, and not in like the, oh, this is what you should eat, more like the, oh yeah, I might make this, I might do this, Staying off the phone and focusing on the drills, yes. I mean, he was on his phone, and while he was on his phone, the assistant coach would be running the drills. But I think the head coach needs to be off his phone. Obviously, he's the head coach. And he needs to focus on the assistant coach, making sure he's doing his things right and not just prompting him and go like, oh, here, explain this drill. Well, does the assistant coach know the drill, right? So he needs to, stay off the phone, focus on the practice. And then making sure the assistant coach stays on task. I think there were also times when the assistant coach and the head coach would just get off track and they would just stand there and talk to each other while everybody else is doing the drill. They both need to be watching the drill and making sure it's done right. So what I learned about myself as a coach, I kind of thought about this after, and I noticed what he did, and I think I should bring this into my coaching style. So develop my leadership role in coaching. I think kids nowadays, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 14-year-olds, whatever, they need to develop a leadership role. I mean, they need a leader in their life. And I think if they have a leader as a coach, it also helps them develop a leadership role in the sport. Focus on the student and the athlete parts of the sport. So at the end of the practice, the head coach did talk about you guys are students first. You need to focus on the class. You need to focus on your grades. And honestly, I feel like some coaches that just the student part does go over their head, and I feel like honestly in myself it definitely goes over my head sometimes too, and I would like to focus more on the student part because I mean you're a student before you're an athlete, and that's a big thing that I think that I need to focus more on with my players. Develop better communication skills. I mean there are times when you have to explain more things to athletes and some don't understand it as well as others. So I feel like if I develop a better communication skill, I can help athletes more and, describe the point more. And also, when you're coaching summer baseball, 14-year-old to whatever, 18, youth sports at all, you do have to deal with parents. And I feel like my communication skill is not that well right now to deal with adults older than me. But I think if I develop that communication skill, I'll be able to talk to parents, what's wrong, what's going on with your child, is everything good at home, stuff like that I think I just need to develop a better communication skill. And then make practices more enjoyable for youth athletes. I think one of the big things that I took away from the observation and even the class, even this class in general is, sports aren't just about winning, Youth sports is not just about winning. It's about developing the player and honestly making the sport enjoyable for them. And I think you kind of get carried away sometimes at practice that you just want the player to be good and you just want to win. And I think that kind of the fun part of sports, which I remember youth sports, the key thing I wanted was to have fun. So I think that's been going over my head a little bit. And I think, just making the practices more fun and enjoyable for the youth athletes. Yeah, so that's my coaching observation. Thank you.